He stands on the periphery of the glittering ballroom, a smudge of honest grease like a defiant badge on his cheekbone, and wonders if anyone here has ever truly built anything with their own hands. The air hums with forced laughter and the clink of crystal, a world away from the satisfying thrum of a perfectly tuned engine. They call it a gala, a celebration of innovation, but Liam Hayes sees mostly pretense, a parade of expensive suits and even more expensive smiles. He's the ghost at this feast, the necessary evil summoned to coax life back into the CEO's prized automotive dream, currently sulking in a cordoned-off alcove. And yes, he's being mocked. Not overtly, not yet, but in the sly, sidelong glances, the barely there upturn of a powdered nose, the way conversations hush then restart a little too loudly when he shifts his weight. He's the greasy mechanic at the party, an unwelcome intrusion of reality into their polished fantasy. He catches a woman's eye, sharp, intelligent, dressed in a gown the color of a midnight sky, her posture radiating a stress that mirrors his own, albeit for different reasons. She's Eleanor Vance, the CEO, and her car, is why he's enduring this. Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from in the comments, and if you believe love should feel like freedom, hit that like button and subscribe. He had no idea, when he'd taken the panicked call an hour ago, that the minor pre-show hiccup involved a prototype hypercar worth more than his entire workshop, on display at the city's most ostentatious charity event, or that its owner, the formidable Eleanor Vance, would look at him not like a savior, but like another problem she didn't have time for. He's used to being underestimated based on the state of his hands, but tonight, under the glare of 1,000 tiny lights, it feels different, sharper. He's not just here to fix a machine. He's a social experiment, a blot on their pristine canvas. And just like that, a stranger with smoke and sarcasm, or in his case, grease and quiet competence, was about to become the most pivotal person in Eleanor Vance's meticulously curated evening. Liam preferred the company of engines. They were honest. They told you what was wrong if you knew how to listen. People, especially the kind gathered here, were a far more complicated and often disappointing mechanism. His workshop, tucked away in a less glamorous part of the city, was his sanctuary, a place of ordered chaos, smelling of oil, metal, and the faint, satisfying aroma of burnt coffee. He wasn't just a mechanic, he was a specialist, an artist with difficult restorations and temperamental custom builds. The kind of man you called when the dealership's technicians just scratched their heads and quoted you a new engine. This Vance prototype, the Ethereum, was a legend in the making, whispered about in automotive circles for its revolutionary powertrain. Getting his hands on it, even in a crisis, was a thrill he'd usually savor. Tonight, however, the thrill was diluted by the palpable disdain. A portly man with a monocle, for crying out loud, had actually sniffed as Liam had walked past, carrying his worn leather tool roll. "Is he with the catering?" someone else had murmured, just loud enough to be heard. Liam had simply tightened his grip on his tools. He'd been summoned by Ms. Vance's frantic chief engineer, a man Liam respected, who was currently stuck on a grounded flight. "Liam, it's dead. Completely. And the showcase is in 2 hours. She'll have my head. She'll have all our heads." That was enough for Liam. A challenge, and a colleague in a bind. The antagonist threat wasn't a person, not really. It was this gilded cage, this pressure cooker of expectation that Eleanor Vance clearly lived in. He'd seen her earlier, a brief, tense exchange from across the room before he was led to the recalcitrant vehicle. Her face, usually composed in press photos, was tight with anxiety. He saw a flicker of something, perhaps a news report on a nearby discreetly placed screen, mentioning Vance Innovation stock dipping, or a rival CEO, one Alastair Finch, smirking from across the room. Finch, a man known for his hostile takeovers and oily charm, seemed to be enjoying the spectacle a little too much. He represented the piranhas circling, waiting for a drop of blood in the water. As Liam finally approached the Ethereum, a sleek, obsidian beast roped off with velvet cords, one of the more brash onlookers, a young man in a too-tight tuxedo, drawled, "Surely they're not letting him touch it? He'll leave fingerprints." Liam ignored him, his focus already narrowing, his world shrinking to the silent engine under the car's sculpted hood. He was beginning to feel that familiar calm that settled over him when faced with a complex problem. This was his element, not the champagne and chatter. The Ethereum might be silent now, but he was here to make it sing. The stakes were high, not just for Vance Innovations, but for Eleanor Vance herself. He could feel it, an unspoken tension that charged the air around her display. The chief engineer's call had been an understatement. The Ethereum wasn't just dead, it was stubbornly, electronically comatose. Liam, after a quick, almost reverent assessment, diagnosed a critical short in a custom-built capacitor array, something the standard diagnostic tools wouldn't even register. It was buried deep, a needle in a very expensive haystack. Eleanor Vance appeared at his elbow, her voice low and strained. "Mr. Hayes, any progress?" Her perfume, something subtle and expensive, warred with the metallic tang of the car. "Working on it, Ms. Vance," he'd said, not looking up. "It's particular." "Particular is its brand," she'd replied, a hint of weariness in her tone. "It needs to be more than particular tonight. It needs to be perfect." This was the catalyst. Not just the car, but her. The way she said perfect, as if the word itself was a lead weight. He saw the pressure lines etched around her eyes, the slight tremor in her hand as she gestured towards a schematic on a nearby tablet. He'd initially been put off by her icy demeanor, but now, up close, he saw the vulnerability she was fighting so hard to conceal. His decision to help, initially professional, solidified into something more personal. He would fix this car, not just for the challenge, but for the look of desperate hope he glimpsed behind her steely facade. The first test of this fragile, unspoken alliance came when a pompous security chief, puffed up with his own importance, tried to deny Liam access to a restricted panel. "Civilian personnel are not permitted." "He's not civilian personnel," Eleanor's voice cut through, sharp as glass. "He's Mr. Hayes, and he has my full authorization. Give him whatever he needs." The security chief deflated, stepping back with a mumbled apology. Liam caught her eye for a split second, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. It was a small victory, but it shifted something. They were, for this moment, a team. The next hour was a blur of intense concentration for Liam and a slow thaw for Eleanor. She remained nearby, a silent observer, as he worked with a focused grace that belied the grease on his hands. He didn't chatter, didn't grandstand. He simply worked, his movements economical and precise. He'd murmured to himself occasionally, or to the car, "Come on now, don't be like that." Eleanor, initially pacing, found herself leaning against a pillar, watching him. The mockery from the gala attendees, though still present in the background hum, seemed to recede. "Why this car?" he asked once, his voice rough from disuse, as he delicately resoldered a connection thinner than a human hair. "It's a statement, I get that. But it feels like more to you." Eleanor was silent for a moment, tracing the line of the car's fender with her finger. "My father started this company with one good idea and a garage full of second-hand tools," she said softly, her gaze distant. "He always dreamed of building something truly revolutionary. Something beautiful and powerful that wasn't just about profit. This was his last design before he passed. It's his legacy." Liam nodded slowly, understanding dawning. This wasn't just a prototype, it was a piece of her heart, a connection to her past. He glanced at his own calloused hands, hands that knew the language of tools and tenacity. He understood legacy. He understood obsession. He found himself telling her about a '67 Mustang he'd spent 3 years restoring, a rusted shell he'd brought back to life for an old man who wanted one last drive. The story was simple, unadorned, but Eleanor listened, truly listened, a small, wistful smile playing on her lips. He was making progress. The capacitor array was repaired, the system rebooting. He could feel the car's complex network of sensors and processors slowly coming back online. There was a shared sigh of relief when the dashboard lights flickered, then glowed steadily. "Almost there," he murmured, mostly to himself. He reached to wipe sweat from his brow with the back of his hand, then froze, realizing it was smeared with grease. He was about to apologize when Eleanor reached into her small, impossibly elegant clutch, pulled out a silk handkerchief embroidered with a delicate V, and gently dabbed his forehead. The gesture was so unexpected, so intimate, it caught him off guard. Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, the cavernous ballroom, the snide whispers, the immense pressure, all faded away. There was just him, her, and the almost living machine between them. Then, Alistair Finch chose that moment to saunter over, his smile like a shark's. "Eleanor, darling, still fiddling with your little toy? Some of us were hoping for a demonstration tonight, not a grease monkey convention." His eyes raked over Liam with open contempt. The spell was broken. Eleanor stiffened, her face hardening back into its corporate mask. "Alistair, Mr. Hayes is a consulting engineer, and he is performing vital diagnostics." "Consulting engineer?" Finch chuckled, a nasty, grating sound. He looks like he crawled out from under a lorry. Are you sure he knows which end of a wrench to hold, Ellie? Liam felt a familiar flush of anger, but he bit it back. He straightened up, his gaze steady on Finch. The Etherean is ready, Ms. Vance, he said, his voice calm and clear. She just needs a confirmation run. Make sure all systems are stable under load. This was it. The moment of truth for the car, and perhaps for something else entirely. Finch scoffed. A confirmation run? Is he planning on joyriding it around the parking lot? Perhaps he can valet it afterwards. A ripple of cruel laughter went through Finch's sycophantic companions. Ellie's knuckles were white where she gripped her clutch. Liam could see the fury in her eyes, the battle between her public composure and her private outrage. He met her gaze, a silent question in his. She gave the smallest, almost imperceptible nod. That was all he needed. He slid into the low-slung driver's seat of the Etherean. The bespoke leather, cool and smooth, felt alien after the familiar worn fabric of his truck. He ignored the titters and the pointed stares. He placed his hands on the steering wheel, feeling the dormant power beneath his fingertips. With a practiced movement, he engaged the ignition sequence. The Etherean didn't roar to life. It awoke, a deep, resonant hum that vibrated through the floor, silencing the chatter in an instant. It was a sound of pure, controlled power. Liam glanced at the aghast faces of Finch and his cronies. He saw Eleanor, her expression unreadable but her eyes fixed on him. Then, with a deliberate, almost theatrical smoothness, he engaged the drive. The Etherean glided forward, silent as a wraith at first, then with a rising, turbine-like whine as it cleared the velvet ropes, past the stunned onlookers, and headed directly for the main exit of the ballroom's exhibition hall. Gasps followed him, a wave of disbelief and outrage. He's stealing it. Finch bellowed, his face purpling. Security. Stop him. Eleanor, for God's sake. Eleanor Vance didn't move. She didn't scream. She simply watched, a strange, almost serene expression settling on her face as the taillights of her father's dream car disappeared out into the night, driven by the greasy mechanic everyone had dismissed. She held up a hand, palm out, silencing Finch's sputtering. Alistair, please, she said, her voice surprisingly calm, carrying easily over the sudden hubbub. Mr. Hayes is merely ensuring the recalibration is stable under diverse load conditions. A standard, if somewhat unorthodox, diagnostic procedure. Finch looked like he was about to have an aneurysm. Unorthodox? Eleanor, he just drove off in a $10 million prototype. Your prototype? Eleanor turned to face him fully, her eyes like chips of ice. And this is my car, Alistair. Not yours. Not the board's. Mine. And Mr. Hayes, she paused, letting the name hang in the air, is the finest automotive engineer I have ever had the privilege of working with. The only one I trust implicitly with its complexities. She then looked past Finch at the stunned, gossiping faces of the gala attendees. Perhaps some of you could learn a thing or two about recognizing true expertise, even when it doesn't come in a bespoke suit. With that, she turned on her heel, fished her phone from her clutch, and quickly typed a message. A moment later, her own keys were in her hand, to her much less conspicuous, but still very fast, sedan. If you'll excuse me, she said to no one in particular, I believe a thorough debrief is in order. She walked out, leaving a wake of bewildered silence and Alistair Finch's impotent fury. Liam drove for about 10 minutes, the Etherean handling like a dream, a seamless extension of his intentions. He wasn't joyriding. He was letting the machine breathe, settle, allowing its myriad systems to synchronize after the trauma of the repair. He found a quiet, well-lit overlook a few miles from the gala, the city lights spread out below like a carpet of scattered diamonds. He cut the engine, the sudden silence profound. A moment later, headlights swept into the parking area, and Eleanor's dark sedan pulled up beside him. She got out, her midnight gown shimmering in the cool night air. She didn't look angry. She looked intrigued and tired. You certainly know how to make an exit, Mr. Hayes, she said, her voice a little breathless. Liam leaned against the Etherean, the metal still warm. They needed to understand, he said simply. And you needed to see it runs perfectly, without their noise. He gestured vaguely back towards the city. It's an incredible machine, Miss Vance. Your father would be proud. Eleanor walked closer, stopping a few feet away. They're fools. I should have said something sooner, more forcefully. Back there. You said enough, Liam replied, meeting her gaze. The city lights reflected in her eyes. When it mattered, Calling me an engineer was a bit generous, though. Mechanic suits me fine. She smiled, a small, genuine smile that transformed her face, erasing some of the tension. Don't sell yourself short, Mr. Hayes. What you did back there, with the car, that was artistry. She paused. Alistair is going to be insufferable. The board will have questions. Liam pushed himself off the car. I can disappear, he offered quietly. Say it was a misunderstanding on my part. An overzealous test. You don't need this kind of trouble because of me. He was prepared to walk away, to melt back into the anonymity of his workshop. He'd fixed the car, that was the job. Eleanor looked at him, then at the Ethereum humming softly as it cooled, a silent testament to their brief, intense collaboration. No, she said, her voice firm. The only thing that was a misunderstanding was me ever doubting true skill over shiny surfaces. Or letting men like Alistair Finch think they have any say in my choices, or who I respect. She took a step closer, bridging the small gap between them. The car is magnificent, Liam. The use of his first name felt natural, right? Thank you. A comfortable silence settled between them, punctuated only by the distant hum of the city. He noticed he still had a smudge of grease high on his cheekbone. He self-consciously tried to rub it away. Eleanor chuckled softly, a warm, genuine sound. She reached into her clutch again, but instead of the silk handkerchief, her fingers brushed his cheek, gently wiping away the grease. Her touch was light, fleeting, but it sent a jolt through him. Her hand lingered for a moment. Perhaps, she mused, her eyes sparkling, it's time Vance Innovation started valuing its engineers and its mechanics a little more than its publicists. Liam found himself grinning. So, what does the best damn engineer you know do for an encore? Well, Eleanor said, a playful lilt in her voice. First, I believe proper compensation is in order. And second, she tilted her head, I was promised a thorough debrief. And I'm suddenly famished. I know a little all-night diner that makes surprisingly good pie. Nothing like the Gala, I assure you. Liam looked at his hands, still bearing the marks of his trade. Usually, I go home and try to get the engine grease out from under my fingernails. It's a losing battle. Eleanor's gaze softened. She gently took one of his hands, her slender fingers tracing the lines on his palm, the ingrained grime. Some battles, she said softly, are worth fighting. And some marks are badges of honor. She looked up at him, her earlier stress replaced by a quiet confidence, a newfound lightness. Besides, she added, her eyes dancing, I think I prefer a man whose hands have actually done something real. He gestured with his free hand towards the passenger seat of the Ethereum. Want a real test drive? Without the audience this time? We can take the scenic route to that pie. Eleanor Vance, CEO, innovator, and a woman who had just rediscovered a part of herself she thought long lost, smiled, a wide, brilliant smile that lit up the night. I thought you'd never ask, Liam. She slid into the passenger seat, the scent of her perfume mingling with the new car smell and the faint, lingering aroma of oil and effort. Liam got in, started the engine, and this time, as they pulled away from the overlook, it wasn't towards the glittering, judgmental city, but towards the open road, towards the promise of pie and conversation, and the quiet, exhilarating freedom of a new, unexpected beginning. The Gala, with its sneers and its superficiality, already felt a lifetime away. There was just the hum of the engine, the ribbon of road unfurling before them, and the shared, hopeful silence between two people who had found something real in a world of artifice. Thanks for watching. If you believe in second chances and real love, give this story a like and subscribe for more.